All right, guys, welcome to the Strong Life Podcast. Welcome back. We've got Pat Miletich on the line, and we already started chatting. So I said, Pat, let's just record. I've known Pat for about 20 years. I'm going to quiz him later to see if he remembers our first conversation. I'm not sure if you'll remember, but Pat is a multiple time, UFC champ, but I've been following him for, before the days of social media. And now what's super interesting is seeing really your knowledge and I want to say really like the deeper knowledge of what's going on in our world with health, with nutrition, with the food, with disease. So I want to tackle some of that stuff, but we were about chatting. I thought your initial fight camp was always on your property, a farm, maybe because the first UFC video they did of you, or one of the early ones, was everybody was training on your farm. And I remember seeing like in between, I guess the guys would work on the farm, like Matt Hughes and Tim Sylvia were shown driving a tractor around.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that was the ESPN, what was that, 360 or whatever they did, documentary. And of course, we're out running down gravel roads. And yeah, the Hughes family had a massive farm. Both sides of my family come from farming and coal mining, actually. So I spent a lot of my summers down on the family farms and things like that. So
Iowa?
certainly, but yeah, in Iowa. Yep. Southern Iowa, Albia, Iowa, to be exact, right outside of there. About 40 miles about 40 miles, I think, from the Missouri border is the best way to explain it.
And Pat, if you see my head down, I'm just taking notes. So just a little.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm paying attention, but I'll just be taking notes. So yeah, 20 years ago, we began chatting, and
I think it was long. It might've been longer than that.
Okay. Well, do you remember how I reached out to you? Good quiz here.
Well, I think it was about functional fitness. You sent me your book. You sent me your first book. I still have that in a box. And I loved it. I mean, the sandbag training and stuff that, was in that book. I actually used a lot of that. And I still do sandbag stuff down at the strongman gym that I'm a member of. I mean, I don't lift near you, dude. You should see these guys down there. I mean, they're some of the strongest people in the world down at that gym. They're lifting, 400-pound sandbags and carrying them around and stuff. It's insane.
Right. The evolution of.
But you know what? I remember doing 5-minute rounds of throwing a 100-pound sandbag over the fence and then jumping over the fence to go get it and throwing it back and forth, because I got that from you.
Well, I think I got it, to be fair, I think I got it. I may have seen Ross Enamite doing it first. And in those early 2000s, he was also creating books. I had sent you my first DVD, and you're the person who turned me on to our buddy Johnny Hines, Monkey Bar Gym.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
How's he doing? I haven't talked to him in years.
Yeah, we exchanged a few text messages a couple months ago. But we haven't chatted, and that's kind of like the shitty thing is we're quote unquote more technologically connected, but I've lost touch with so many people. I think when you and I began chatting, I didn't have kids. Now, like I'm just super busy. So
right,
I kind of miss out on chatting, but I think, he's still running his gym. He moved around a bit. I think he's back in Wisconsin, but I think he had one in Chicago, tried to get somebody to run it. And I don't think it worked out. I think he's back in Madison, and I think he loves it there more. Like it's more peaceful.
Yeah. And that's, all of that long before CrossFit and all of that, I got lucky to run into Dr. Ed Thomas. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah. The club bells. That's right. Right.
Yeah. The kettlebells, Indian clubs, cargo nets, pommel horses.
Yes.
So he grew up, and he's got a bunch of stuff. Look for his documentary. I'm trying to remember the golden mirror, I think it is, when he took, and he's the one that taught me functional fitness long before CrossFit existed and all that stuff, because he grew up in the Turner halls here in Davenport, Iowa. There's a, somewhat of a German population that came to Davenport, and the Turner halls came from Germany, where they had all the cargo nets, the ropes, the pommel horses, Indian clubs, kettlebells, functional fitness stuff, where all the kids are walking around on their hands, 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, all just walking around on their hands. And so the mentality was that they would build a generation of functionally fit youngsters in case there was a war and they were functionally fit and could be taught anything when it came to warfare, how to operate it. And that's the same mentality for athletics. If I can make someone functionally fit, where, that mindset of, if I can run, jump, climb, swim, do all these things, then I can pretty much be taught to use any tool or jump in any sport and be somewhat successful, right? And so he was a tunnel rat. I believe he did 3 tours, signed up for extra tours of duty, being a tunnel rat of all things. And I asked him once, I said, do you ever have flashbacks from the Vietnam War? He goes, no. He goes, it was an amazing honor to be at war with, he said the North Vietnamese were so intelligent. To outsmart them on a daily basis was an honor for him. Really? The dude is supremely intelligent, really deep dude. So I learned a lot from him. He taught me how to train upside down with gravity boots, with bands from the bar, kettlebells, plates, medicine balls from below, all that sort of stuff, reverse squats. And he completely rebuilt my body by doing that. There's
video footage of like all kinds of highlights, and they show you on the gravity boots, like rowing, inverted, which so he taught you how he would train you, or he would communicate with you from afar? How did he?
Well, how it happened, because he was the head of Army Physical Readiness at one time, and then he was part of Iowa Physical Education, and he left that department when he saw, all of a sudden there's square dancing for gym class. So, it's just, the infiltration that happened and the feminization of boys is what started, that's when it all started. But I was in my office at my gym I think I was doing paperwork or something, or doing phone calls, and all of a sudden this 140-pound guy with white hair walks into my office, and he says, Pat, I'm Ed Thomas, pleased to meet you. And he said, I've got some stuff out in my vehicle, and I was wondering if I could bring it in and teach you how to use it. Well, I always had an open mind for stuff like that, so I said, sure. So we brought in Indian clubs and kettlebells and stuff like that. I'd never seen that stuff before at the time.
Yeah.
And so he taught me how to use it, taught me patterns with Indian clubs, and then just I got the phone rang in my office after about an hour and a half of him being there. My phone rang. I was in my office. I had to answer it. And then I hung up the phone. I wasn't on the phone but 2 minutes. Turned around, he was gone, and his vehicle was gone out of the parking lot. So he just disappeared. And then a couple months later, he'd show up and do the same thing. Sorry,
that's okay.
Let me mute this.
Very interesting.
So sorry about that. I'm actually in town right now, but yeah. And then a couple months later, he'd show up out of the blue again and teach me more.
What was his work? He was, like, I guess, the state chairperson for Iowa Health and Physical Education.
Yeah, and he, I think he designed a lot of the programs and things like that.
I wonder where, was this late 90s?
Yeah. Mid to late 90s is kind of where all that was happening.
I don't know of anybody back then who had kettlebells. Maybe Steve Cotter made his own kettlebells at that time, but otherwise he probably had his imported from another country.
Ed Thomas is probably the first and foremost mind in terms of functional fitness, like the first guy. And he's got a library of books from the turn of the century, into the 20s. And it's you can look up old pictures of the Turner Halls. Yes. Where the kids are, they would swing the giant cargo nets back and forth, and those ceilings were way up in the air, and you got little kids serpentining upside down, going up and down these cargo nets through the holes in the net while the thing is swinging. I mean, it's really cool stuff.
Quite different. And also where, Iowa, Pennsylvania, any place that has farms, just those kids are ahead of the curve. Jim Wendler says, we're such a lazy society now that we lift weights to recreate what other people do, in real life.
Right. Well, I learned that early on, I did some work, obviously, and the strongest I ever was when I was pouring concrete for 4 years. When I left college, my mom had heart problems, so I left college early and was pouring concrete during the day and then bartending and bouncing at night and then training in between. But pouring concrete made me stronger than I ever was. I mean, that was it. But I found out early on. I was in 8th grade and I was undefeated that year, had smashed everybody. I was like 32-0 at the time. And I went to a summer tournament in Lisbon, Iowa. And I'm standing there, I look up at the bracket, and first round, I'm 32-0, and I'm wrestling a guy named Royce Alger,
Oh, damn.
who's undefeated as well. Well, I don't even know who Royce is at the time. And we go out on the mat, and he mangles me, literally mangles me. I'd never felt anything that powerful in my life.
Yeah.
And I walked off the mat and went, okay, that's what real wrestling is supposed to look like, apparently. And it was a wake-up call for me, though, to start looking for ways to get stronger, spend a lot more time in the weight room, things like that. But when the thing that I try to get through to people is, the kids that grew up on the farms not only had the strength from, lifting odd shaped heavy objects and bucking hay and, all that sort of stuff, but they also were eating wholesome foods. They were eating, from the garden that was on their property, that sort of stuff. So the organic nutrients from the soil, and there's no chemicals in it for the most part. So they're going to be stronger because their bodies are developing with the organic, nutrients that they're supposed to have, along with the resistance of really hard labor. And they're just going to be stronger than, I shook hands with a bunch of farmers just the past couple of days ago when I was speaking at an agriculture conference. I'm telling you, dude, you talk about bear paws on human beings. These boys are strong.
What
You can tell when they grab a hold of you.
Right. So my buddy Josh Bryant posted on his Instagram about how Vince Gironda was, and I have the magazine. I'll have to dig it up and send you photos. He had the steak and eggs diet, which was steak, eggs, and whole milk. But I always explain to people, listen, whole milk of the late 60s compared to today was like being on steroids. I mean, the whole milk of 60 years ago was, even in the early 80s, a little bit, I would see a milkman drive through the neighborhood to deliver milk. Now, in New Jersey, it's illegal to get raw milk. So I've picked it up before in Pennsylvania, but the milk of today, it expires like 7 weeks from now. And I'm always saying to myself, what the F is that?
Well, the problem is people have to understand pasteurized processed milk. So they pasteurize it with heat, which kills all the natural enzymes and the microbes and everything else in it and the benefits of it. And then they add inorganic sources of vitamins and minerals into it, which we're organic organisms. You do not benefit from inorganic sources of vitamins and minerals. That's why 95%, if not more, percent of the stuff that are on shelves in grocery stores and other places that distribute so-called health supplements are useless. It's a waste of time. I can't even, the one thing that medical doctors do understand is that those sources, most anyway, at one time, understand that taking vitamin and mineral supplements off the shelves of grocery stores and other places are absolutely useless. They serve no purpose. They're actually probably not only not beneficial, but probably somewhat of a detriment, to be honest, to your health.
How long have you lived on you have your own farm, Pat, or your own large property?
I just sold a property. I sold 2 properties in the past year, actually, and I'll probably be headed a lot. I'll spend a lot of time in North Dakota. I'll probably live up there, and then I'm going to buy another property down here where I'm going to put a pole building up because I've got a agriculture business that I'm doing. So it's going to be kind of back and forth between North Dakota and Iowa quite a bit, and my girlfriend has a farm up there, so I'll be spending a lot of time up there.
What's on your farm? And animals, what are you growing? What do you have on your farm, on your property?
Well, on her farm, that'll, I guess, eventually be ours, so to speak. It'll be, there'll be hydroponic gardens. There's large buildings there, so we're able to do hydroponic gardening of a large amount of hydroponic gardening. Chickens, goats, probably no cattle. Her father's got a farm. Her mother and father have a farm where they raise cattle. So we can just buy buy cattle, for that. But already considering running a bulldozer and digging a big pond and having fish, and a lot of sources of food and variety is really kind of the way to go right now.
What's your eating look like today?
This morning I went out to the garden and I snipped off some leaves of Swiss chard, and I sauteed them in grass-fed salted butter, and then threw 4 free-range chicken eggs in there, and that was my breakfast. I like doing that every morning. I do that.
I've been the past like 2 months. I go to, it's like 12 minutes away. I pick up farm fresh eggs, and I actually saw, where the lady has the eggs and they're running free. And it's interesting. Like, I live in a beach town, but like not 10 minutes away is the farms. And so you see them running wild. And so those eggs are quite different than the ones I would purchase in a supermarket. But one thing I don't know is exactly what they feed their chickens, because I know if they're feeding them, I'm assuming they don't feed them corn and things like that. And some of the kids I train are from that area, and they have chickens, and they said their dad feeds the chickens like other eggs or like sliced up vegetables and stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of times, free range chickens, they're going around eating bugs.
Yes.
And eating larvae out of cow manure, and the chickens will use their feet to dig through the manure, which spreads it out, right, and helps it break down faster into the soil, into the pastures and things like that. And the Ag Solutions Network and the California Ag Solutions Group and all of their co-op owners and their founder, Monty Bottens, and his wife, Robin, invited me over there to speak from the human health and performance side, to help piece the puzzle together from the soil all the way to human health. And, through those conversations, you're learning, how they're using selective grazing. So one year it'll be a cornfield. The next year, the cows are grazing out there because they've got cover crops and a lot of other things. And then the cows their manure is getting spread all over, that field, which is great. They're not tilling up the soil. They're letting it just absorb into the soil and blading, their product into the ground instead of turning the soil over, which is causing some problems over the years. There was so much information that came at me from the soil, crop, and livestock side of things that I learned at such a fast rate. And then a lot of them were very interested in speaking with me more on the human health side, because people have to understand that all the minerals and nutrients that are in a healthy soil are the exact same minerals and nutrients that are supposed to be in the human body. So we are literally the soil. We're dust from the universe, right? And so that's super important for people to understand. So as billions of gallons of petroleum-based fertilizers and glyphosate and atrazine and a lot of other chemicals get dumped on our crops and our soil, it directly correlates. If you look at a graph of the usage of it through time here in the past, 40 years, 50 years, you can see the deterioration and the incline and the climbing rates of cancer and autoimmune disease and all kinds of other diseases.
I say it all the time that as a kid in elementary, middle, and even high school, you barely ever heard a friend or anybody talk about, hey, my mom or my aunt or somebody has cancer. You just didn't hear about it. And I spoke with Dr. Tom Incledon, who's based out of Arizona, and he said it's from the pollution in the air. So he said, even if you're in Idaho, he's like, just the pollution travels, it gets into our soil and crops. And like I mentioned,
it's derived from the soil itself. When it rains, then things evaporate. The glyphosate and all the other chemicals evaporate with the water up into the sky, and then it rains back down on us. So if we fix the soil, Zach, we literally fix mankind. We fix our waterways and we fix our air that way. So it's really coming from the soil, what's being put down on the soil. And a lot of people don't understand that, glyphosate was patented as an antibiotic, right? So what's happening is when plants are grown through synthetic forms of nitrogen and phosphorus and things like that, they don't have the natural enzyme. They're very sick to begin with. You can grow apples, you can grow tomatoes, you can grow corn synthetically, but there's no real nutrients or very little nutrients, organic nutrients in the plants themselves. So they're very ill. And see if this sounds familiar. So then they don't give off natural enzymes that inhibit certain bugs from eating them and weeds from growing around them. So then you have to spray pesticides and herbicides onto the crops, which are antibiotics because the plants are very sick, right? So mankind then eats, we are what we eat. Well, did you ever stop to think that our food is what it eats? So whatever's grown in sick soil is going to be sick food, and then livestock eat the sick food. The livestock are sick as well. We eat the livestock. So there's a lack of organic nutrients, and plus throw the chemicals on top of the whole thing. So mankind doesn't have the organic nutrients in our bodies. Most of us don't, to fend off disease, to stop the inflammation that manifests in various forms that the medical community calls disease. And then they give us antibiotics and a lot of other medications, which are in themselves synthetic chemicals as well. So it's just this vicious matching cycle in agriculture and in human health that has been going on for decades. And we just have to break that cycle and wake people up. And the only way that we stop it is if we just stop buying garbage.
Right. When's the last time you bought something from a supermarket, or how do you get your food now?
Well, I mean, I've got an entire hog. I've got 2 deer and half a cow sitting in freezers right now that were
From hunting,
from farms and and actually I haven't had time to hunt those. I got those from Tim Sylvia.
And where's Tim? Is he back in Maine, or is he in your area?
No, he lives outside of town.
Okay.
He's here in Iowa. Yeah. So, but yeah, Tim obviously has his own hunting show, and that's what he does for a living, along with he's part of a roofing company. So he's going around hooking people up with new roofs.
Good. Yeah. Good for him. That's what from when I meet guys who are hunters. So one of the kids I trained, the dad hunts, and he gave me venison. He got me 2 back straps and a bunch of ground beef. So I just grilled my first back strap 2 days ago. And what's your go-to like when you when you grill up a back strap? How do you season it? How do you grill it up?
I marinate it in olive oil and garlic and some other spices and stuff, and just let it sit. Let it sit, and then grill it up like that. And it's amazing. And I always grill. I always grill on charcoal. I won't grill or wood fire, and so I won't grill on
propane,
gas. I hate gas grills.
Totally different. We were up in Lake George, and I grilled on charcoal, and my wife's like, we need a charcoal. So what'd you do? Make your own grill, like a fire pit? Did you make your own, or what? Did you purchase one of these like popular brands that like Traeger?
No, I've got 2 old Coleman grills. Mm-hmm. Just slap. You can throw wood in it or charcoal or whatever, and grill on that. And then the last time I was up in North Dakota and Minnesota on that border area at my girlfriend's, we grilled out on an open fire some Wagyu beef steaks that I got from a guy that when I sold him some fulvic acid. That's the most nutrient rich, 100% plant-based organic fulvic acid basically found on the planet yet.
Yeah. So
for his cattle's health, you can just mix it with feed, 2 pounds of the powder with 1 ton of feed. And that's really the organic nutrients that his cattle really need. And he's raising very high level beef, so he recognizes it. And so he gave me some steaks. He loaded me up with some stuff, and thanked me. And we went back to her parents' farm, and we grilled out some Wagyu beef on an open wood fire, man.
That's great. Pat, what have you done, like, quote unquote, for work? You've been, since I've known of you, from the late 90s, early 2000s, you were running a fight camp. What was how did you build income? What was did you ever have like a quote unquote real job?
Earlier in life, I poured, like I said, I poured concrete. I did landscaping. I think my first job, was bagging groceries. you know, but one thing that I recognized is that I didn't really care to work for other people. I didn't like being told what to do, especially by people that seemed inept to me. And so I woke up one day after I'd been back from college for a while and training in martial arts. It just dawned on me that I was destined for something bigger. I didn't, but I decided I was going to win a world title one morning when I woke up. I said, this isn't my destiny. I'm going to win a world title and do something, a little bigger. And I knew that winning a world title really wasn't the end all be all. And even training world champions wasn't the end all. I knew there was something much bigger. And, broadcasting for, 3 different networks at the same, it's kind of funny when I think about it. Because I got blackballed just for standing up against at the time, the UFC and Dana White, and they kind of blackballed me from the sport. They didn't even want me coming to events with my fighters. That's how bad it was, right? And and then I got a job with Showtime Sports broadcasting, and then I got an ESPN offer at the same time, and then I got the Access TV offer. So I'm working for all 3 networks at the same time. And I think Dana and the Fertittas probably went, man, this guy, we can't get rid of this guy. So they put me in the Hall of Fame, whatever. But I guess I'm kind of a person that likes to climb a mountain and then be done with it. You know what I mean? So one thing that I've always cared about people's health, 30 years ago when I was teaching karate, watching little boys be brought to me that had autism, and I'd never heard of autism before. And we had just started to see that stuff, raising its ugly head a lot more. And I was always the guy that would say, why is this happening? Not just accepting it and listening to, a doctor say, or give him some of these pills. And no, what's causing the problem? Why are these kids sick? Why are they having behavioral issues?
Yeah.
Why are their hormone levels being destroyed? All these different things. And that was just kind of the beginning of me kind of diving into searching for health. And I had a severe respiratory issue from black mold. And that was caused by my mom's house. The basement leaked. So there was black mold down in that base. That's where my bedroom was. So anyway, when I started, right as I was going into my professional kickboxing career, a friend of mine who was a former Mr. Universe introduced me to some organics. And when I took those organics, it took literally 10 days for me to go from three rounds of sparring at the boxing gym to 10 rounds.
Organics,
and I'm talking with
what?
really...
That was the name of it? Organics?
No. It was a product by a company called BodyWise. And it was a bunch of antioxidants in one capsule, right? And so my respiratory system healed up enough to where all of a sudden I can run hard and I can breathe. People don't understand it. I guess someone with asthma or COPD would understand, because that all respiratory issues are caused by inflammation. So I always felt like I was breathing through a straw. So all of a sudden now I'm breathing through a giant PVC tube, and I can get air, I can get oxygen. Not to mention this bonds with, different forms of organics bond with hydrogen inside of your cells and create more oxygen inside of the cells. And so the benefit of that is, if I've got more oxygen to burn, well, if I'm not going to run out of oxygen, put it this way, if I run out of oxygen in my cells and my muscles, then my muscles will start to burn sugar for energy, which converts to lactic acid. Spent sugar in the muscles is lactic acid. So if I'm not building up lactic acid and I'm not sore the next day and I don't feel the impact near as much, well, I can hit it just as hard the next day. And then again and again, and it just compounds upon itself, and you train harder and harder and harder. So, when I was in my prime, all of a sudden I went from barely being able to run fast for any amount of time because of my respiratory issues to, 16 to 16 and a half minute 5Ks. I'm now dunking a basketball. I'm benching 375 pounds. I'm running a 4.40, doing all of these things. And now all of a sudden I can win a world title because of that, because it changed my health so dramatically. And that turned a light bulb on for me. And so I just ventured down that path, searching for the best stuff on the planet. And I've found some really amazing things. And I've seen thousands and thousands of people change what was pretty much a hopeless existence health-wise to completely changing their lives. And now they're doing amazing things in their own life, because once they get their health back, then they sit down and go, well, what have I always wanted to do? Because now I can do it. That's the stuff that we're trying to do for people.
So you're talking about like the supplement that you have out that I've seen you post something.
Yeah. So we're getting ready to relaunch, as a matter of fact, it's a more refined version of the fulvicumic with a 100% organic vitamin C. And I've seen more changes in human health and athletic performance with this one substance. Now, of course, I want to add other things to that, like a healthy diet and other supplements that are organic in nature. But in terms of all the supplements and all the substances that I've seen in 35 years of searching, I've never seen the dramatic changes like I have with this. And my goal, it dawned on me that I wanted to build organic super soldiers, because I've seen what people can do with a lot of organic nutrients in their bodies and hard training, right? So that's what we're calling it, super soldier.
And so are you getting it to the military first, or who will it be available to?
It'll be available to everybody. It'll be available there. We're just getting ready to launch it. It's all being it's veggie caps, 100% plant-based. So, there's no chemicals in it whatsoever. And that's super important. And they'll be able to find that at chemicalfreebody.com. And we're going to have another landing page as well for it.
What did you speak about at that event you were recently at with the farmers you were talking about?
What did I speak about?
Yeah.
I spoke about my journey, kind of what we've been talking about on the human side of things, and understanding that the people that I've been around, I've done some ultra running. My longest run, 75 miles. I'm not a runner, but somehow I went 75 miles and done a lot of runs up shorter distances for training. But those people that do that and can do that without even changing they'll run 100 miles at altitude in Colorado at the Leadville 100, and they don't even change their facial expression. Do you know how hard it is to run 100 miles in that kind of altitude and those kind of inclines and declines?
Yeah,
it's crazy. And so it dawned on me, I'm down at the strongman gym watching guys lift 1,000 pounds, and I've run with people who can run 100 miles at altitude, and I'm seeing people doing incredible things in the swimming pool. So the X-Men actually exist. When you look around at the vast majority of mankind and the things that they're capable of, because they're so sick and obese and everything else, that the X-Men actually exist. I mean, I've run with them and I've had them grab a hold of me. I've felt these human beings, and I've seen them do incredible things. So it is because of these organic nutrients that they're capable of doing these things.
Because of how they're eating.
Because of how they're eating and the supplements that they're taking. And there's always going to be those who will, go with synthetics, steroids, things like that. But they're going to be their health is going to suffer. Eventually, it's going to collapse. They're going to suffer from it. I've seen it over the years too many times.
Yeah. What do you have? So you're in Iowa now. What's kind of, it's interesting in just through talking with you, I'm thinking of two things. You don't have any hey, I'm going to retire at certain age. And the other thing I'm thinking about is, you mentioned physical education. I've been involved in physical education since 98, and then the strength and conditioning since 02. I've seen such a real dramatic or drastic decline in the fitness of our kids. I've explained it on previous podcasts, but in a nutshell, I said, man, boys have boobs and wide hips, and we've just got kids that can't do push-ups. And I tell the way I explain it, actually, I'll be speaking to the parents of the football team today, is listen, I could look at your son and I could see steak and potatoes, or I could see SpaghettiOs and, Elio's pizza. It just comes out in your body.
Yeah.
So I guess really the food that's being available to families, I don't know why we see this like drastic decline, but they're just opting really
Well, and
to.
even with, you can, my friend from chemicalfreebody.com, Tim James, there's a Whole Foods here in town, and he came all the way from Oregon with his film crew and said, let's go to your natural grocers or Whole Foods or whatever. I want you to go shopping. And I can't remember that actually. I'm not going to say the name of the store, just because I don't want to, criticize them. But he said, I'm just going to follow you around with my camera crew, and you pull stuff off the shelf that you would eat and that you would feed your kids, and I'll look at the back of it and tell you what's in it and what it does to you. And so he goes, you're fairly knowledgeable about food. Obviously, you won a world title, this and that. Yeah. So I'm going around and I'd pull something off the shelf, put it in the cart. He'd pick it up, read what's in it, what it does to you. I'd pick it back up, put it back on the shelf. We can go back down further. And I'm getting fire hosed with information about, all the different things that are in our food these days. And even when I got around to the produce section, pick up something that I obviously would feed my kids, put it in. He goes, what's the PLU number on that? I go, what's a PLU number? He goes, well, that tells you whether herbicides, pesticides, whether it was, whether it had petroleum-based fertilizers used on it, whether it was truly grown organically, all those things. So people can look up PLU number, and then you can look at the produce, and it'll tell you what's been used on it and whether you want to feed it to your kids. So by the time, I've got, I think, one bunch of bananas in the cart, and we've been there for 30 minutes, and the manager of the store comes up and he goes, what are you guys doing? And I said, oh, we're just, my friend's helping educate me on food. And so I'm just shopping, and he's telling me kind of, the benefits of certain foods and not. And I think the light bulb went off in the store manager's head, and he goes, you guys can't be here filming. This is, you got to shut the camera off, that. So, but we were there for quite a while, and I learned quite a bit, and that's many years ago. When it came to, so I've just been lucky to be surrounded by people with a lot of knowledge who have educated me in a lot of ways, including you, right? We've interacted and learned some things from each other. And that's what we are. We're just our experiences, our observations, our research, it's a compilation of all of that. And then just putting it all together for kind of who we are today and our knowledge base and how we look at the world.
Yeah. I think there's like this community starting to try to learn how to do things on their own. And it seems to be starting with, hey, get a few chickens, put them in your backyard, and start, eating your own eggs, like little things. Where I go and pick up eggs, they've got like 40 or so chickens. They said that could change if a like fox comes around. And then one day she didn't have eggs. She's like, just go about a mile down. And this guy purchased property. I left him a note, and we exchanged a few text messages, but it's kind of narrow. But he goes 10 acres, and he said it's a start. And he's like, we just ordered 100 chickens, and they've got some of their own vegetables. But it seems like people are certainly trying to do this, and it's certainly my goal. Like, I've never gone hunting. The meats that I've gotten are sometimes from people who hunt, will give me meat, and it's just much, you just could really taste the difference. And I've also said this before, I've noticed the guys who just eat what they kill, even if they're older than me, they're just muscular. They look young, and Kip
Right.
Fulks. Do you know Kip Fulks? He was the co-founder of Under Armour. Do you know that name?
Yes, I've heard the name.
He's a big hunter, and he said he'll only eat elk and venison, and that's all he feeds his kids. He's like, I'm not, giving my kids all that hormone infested shit from the supermarkets. And Kip, I think, is 50, and I was with him last January, and he's extremely fit, and he's ripped.
Right. Yeah.
Just
And that's
eating what he
the thing
hunts.
is, yeah. And so, there's farmers obviously in this area, and the owner of California Ag Solutions, who invited me to their conference, Monty Bottens. You can look up Grateful Graze online. They have incredible grass-fed beef. There are no grains, there are no hormones, there are none of that stuff. They use pure organics for their cattle.
Grateful
And now
Greens?
Grateful Grains, or Grateful Graze. Sorry.
Graze. Okay.
Yes. Graze, Grateful Graze.
Okay.
And then Botton's Family Farm. And, any farmers or co-op owners that are interested in the biological way of farming, these guys are looking for solutions and mixing things together and listening, like I said, to them discuss what techniques they use, what cover crops they use, how they graze their cattle, and what times they plant, what times they apply any kind of product to their crops or their soil. There's so much knowledge, and these guys farmers have to be so intelligent to understand everything that they do. You have to be a heavy equipment operator, you have to be a mechanic, you have to be a scientist, botanist. You have to be able to do so many things and understand chemistry. And I mean, farmers are super, super intelligent human beings. So listening to them, it was really overwhelming at times how fast the conversations were moving. It would be, my ex-wife is from Montreal and they speak French. So by the time I started to understand the language, at a certain point, you want to interject and speak French with them because you're starting to understand what they're saying. But then the conversation's already moved on and you're too late, right? By the time it clicks in your brain. So some of the stuff I started to understand on the level where I wanted to interact, but the conversation was moving so fast that I couldn't interject at that time. So, that's kind of the way
out
it
in
is.
California.
No, that's it was over in Cambridge, Illinois, and then at Bally's Casino here was the convention, because the owner of California Ag Solutions has a farm, a 3,500 acre farm outside of Cambridge, Illinois here.
California Ag Solutions. What were they like? What were the farmers kind of concerned with or struggling with? What was their concerns?
Well, their concerns are, these are the people who, the small percentage of farmers right now, I think it's growing quickly, that are recognizing that the chemicals are doing some severe damage, not only to human health, but also eventually going to be detrimental to their way to make a living. Because once the soil's dead, the soil's dead. We got big problems. And there was an article in the Des Moines Register about a week ago, and I filmed a video. It's not, I don't have it on social media or anything. It's going to be on my website, where I hold up the Des Moines Register, and the front headline is the Midwest ready or due for another Dust Bowl? In 1937, in the Midwest, the soil, or down in Oklahoma and areas like that, from over farming and a lot of other things that were going on, the soil died and turned to dust. And when the wind blew and it was dry, well, it buried entire small towns in the dust, literally houses buried in the dust because the soil was dead. Now, I'm somebody who's old enough from this area in Iowa to remember that the soil was jet black here. The darker the soil, the healthier it is.
Oh,
right?
I've heard that.
So it was jet black. Now it's tan. It's basically clay, and it's dead. And so there are soil reclamation, projects going on. There's a lot of folks that I'm talking to in terms of using our fulvicumic as part of the soil reclamation to heal the soil, because it's basically 1,500 different types of plants that have decomposed for 60,000 years. It comes from the most nutrient-rich peat bogs in North America, and it's a sustainable product because 50 feet below the surface of the bog is where that layer starts. They auger it up out of the ground. They use a patented flash freezing and pressurizing system to remove the fulvicumic acid powder, and then the rest of the matter goes back into the bog to continue the humification process. So these bogs are 50 miles long by 25 miles wide, and the sediment layer of the fulvicumic acid is a couple 100 feet deep. So you can imagine how much there is of that, and there's only 1 pound of this needed per acre to start that breakdown of nutrients in the soil into bioavailable nutrients for plants, right? And then you add to that, manure, composting, cover cropping, a lot of other things that help bring the soil back to life. So we've got a big problem, but there's a lot of people out there that have solutions. And Monty Botton's in California Ag Solutions, and the folks that work with him in that Ag Solutions network are folks that they're getting after it.
I think, I don't know if it's just hearsay, but you see sometimes on social, they're talking about be concerned, Bill Gates is purchasing farmland everywhere. And is that
right? Well, people have to understand that, you know, the CRISPR technology within the mRNA vaccines actually does change your DNA, right? That's what it's designed to do. So my DNA is who I am, your DNA is who and what you are, right? Why would I want to change the very essence of my being through a synthetic chemical and a process, and Bill Gates buying hundreds of thousands of acres of land, and at the same time they are developing mRNA vegetables. So there's mRNA technology within the vegetables that are going to be grown on these farms. And then when we look deeper into it, we're looking at supply chain collapses, diesel fuel costs, farming products costs, a lot of other things that are going to cause potential food shortages. Well, what happens if the only food available has mRNA technology in it and you have to eat it? I think it should be my choice what I put in my body, right?
Yeah,
That's why I tell
100%.
people. That's why I've told people for years, grow your own food, man. Grow your own food, because once you give multinational corporations and government the ability to feed you, you also give them the ability to starve you. And that's kind of important for people to understand.
What, I'm a dad, I've got teenage kids. Do you, were people asking you about, hey, what's your advice? Well, you were speaking to farmers. Do you ever speak to quote unquote normal people like me who are just kind of, in the suburbs, so to speak?
I used to do a lot of motivational speaking, Zach, and I used to do a lot of, speeches. People just Rotary clubs, whatever. They'd call me and say, hey, we want you to come talk about, your sport, motivation, what it takes to be, top level in that sport, those sort of things. My passion now is, healing the soil and healing mankind, really, is what it is. And so those are the type of speeches that I'm doing. And anybody that ever wants me to come and explain this stuff, I'm more than willing to come, and help them understand and where to get these products and how to get these products so that they can, and people can look up the benefits of fulvic humic acids to humans, to soil, to crops, to any of that in varying degrees of refinement, so to speak. And they're going to understand and see the studies that show it. And this is the king of fulvic humic acids. I've searched and searched and searched for the best. And I was lucky enough to get the exclusive U.S. rights to this for agriculture and also for livestock. So that's what I'm pursuing. I'm having a blast with it. And, it's great that there are farmers out there and co-op owners that are kind of keying in to what I'm saying from the human side of things and the human health and performance side. And what I've observed over all the years of these massive explosions in endurance and strength from organics and their understanding of the soil and crops. And then we all put the pieces of the puzzle together and go, we're figuring this out. We're getting this figured out. We're moving down that road.
What's your website, Pat? You mentioned the one website.
You can go to soilsavior.com.
Okay.
And people can buy that for their lawn and garden instead of putting, petroleum-based fertilizers, nitrogens on their lawn. Instead of using glyphosate, having a chemical company truck come by and spray your lawn and then put a stake in your yard with a sign that says, don't let your kids play in this for 7 days or 5 days. Well, how about spray something on your yard that your kids can go out and roll around in it?
Or you're even think about this, like I lost my dog. I had to put my dog down about a year and a half. But I also think of, like, we never heard of dogs with cancer 20, 30 years ago either. And so I live, what's that? Yeah. And so I'm trying to use, like, here's some basic common sense. There's a pond 3 houses away from me. And it kind of feeds into a creek. We moved here 12 and a half years ago in the winter. So a couple months later, we'd fish there. I'd take my son, was catching massive catfish, but then also, like, I was catching like eels, which I don't know if that's some sort of like hybrid fish, but every year I would catch less and less. When I first got there, it was like fishing in a pond. So about 4 years ago, I saw the local biology or science teacher taking a water sample. And I said, oh, what are you doing? She's like, well, this is for our class. I go, I want you to know I've been fishing here for a while. I go, in this summer, I don't catch anything. I said, but when I used to come here, I could catch 7 or 8 fish in about 45 minutes. So I said, what happened here? And she said, well, if you look around, everybody's getting their lawn fertilized. And she said, when it rains, it like flows into the pond. And also the pond each year became like overgrown with, I don't even know what like you couldn't even fish in it if it was like I get algae is good. So it must be like weeds.
It depends, it depends. It's an invasive type of, so like I say, where plants, if they have enough organic nutrients in them, they give off natural enzymes to be able to fend off a lot of bugs that would want to eat them and weed growth around them. So that pond is an ecosystem. That pond is a living organism. And when all of those synthetic chemicals are draining into it, it's destroying the health of that ecosystem.
Yes.
And that as a unit, as an organism, that pond is dying, literally dying and very sick. Yeah. So then that sort of thing can happen to it where plants can take over, suffocate it, low oxygen levels, and everything else that it's a cascading effect.
Even what about, I live near the beach, so I could go to a fishery nearby, but what has like impacted our oceans? Like if I'm buying fish, what is it? Are they also kind of getting this like negative impact?
Of course. Yeah. Obviously the oceans and seas are much bigger bodies of water, and they're able to filter things out a lot better, but it's absolutely affecting it. I mean, they're seeing chemicals in fish out of the ocean rise, quite a bit. And that's why it's important to put these organic nutrients into your body, because they naturally have the ability to chelate. They bond with heavy metals and toxins within your cells and chelate them out of your cells and out of your body. So that way you can, and again, in studies, humic fulvic acids have been shown to be able to bond with hydrogen within the cell and create a higher oxygen level. So as organisms, organic organisms, we're water, oxygen, good bugs, and bad bugs. So the more good water you can put in yourself and stay hydrated, the more oxygen, higher oxygen levels in the cellular level is always going to be beneficial. And if you have more good bugs than bad bugs in you, that's how health is found, really.
What's on your home property, Pat? Do you have well water? How do you get your water?
I had well water at my old properties, but we have well water up in North Dakota. So we've got a water purification system here though in town.
Like, oh, okay. So you don't have like a whole house water filter?
No, we did at the other house with the well. So, and I drink a lot of water that's not tap water. Let's put it that way. I mean, I've got a lot of friends that don't shower with city water because your skin is your largest organ. So whatever your skin comes in contact with, you're going to absorb. And that's so deodorants, people need to look at their deodorants and their shampoos and I've never used sunscreen in my life. I won't use it because the sun does not cause cancer. The parabens and aluminums and everything else in your deodorants and your sun blockers are proven to cause massive amounts of cancer. So go to goat milk soaps, for instance, instead of these garbage fragrant soaps, goat milk soaps and organic deodorants and things like that. Now, granted, the organic deodorants don't work as well. They don't last as long, but I'm more than happy to pit out a little bit to save my health.
Yeah. Which brand do you get? Is it a local one or do you go like Tom's?
Burt's Bees and some other ones, Burt's Bees has some and some toothpaste, the charcoal toothpaste and things like that. I don't use, the fluorides and the fluoridation of our water as well as it's the wrong kinds of fluoride. There's beneficial fluoride and there's damaging fluoride. Well, they happen to put the damaging fluoride in toothpaste and water. And people can go, he's wearing a tinfoil hat. If they actually did some research, they would find out the same answers.
And what's interesting is we're seeing like, you got some people online like Liver King and Paul Saladino. They're talking about eating in ways that really Vince Gironda spoke about in the 60s. Eating those old strength and health magazines from the 50s and 60s spoke about eating liver. But food now, like you said, is like the soil has what we eat today. Like I always go back to milk. Like the milk of today is not like milk of 60 years ago. Yeah, I'm 46 years old, 50 years ago.
Yeah, no, it's so we have to say, the things that are being done to the soil, the things that are being done to processed food, the medications up to all synthetic chemicals, and then potentially DNA altering medications that they're administering now. All of these synthetic meats that Bill Gates talked about, and getting rid of cows, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Why would they want to convert everything into synthetics and away from its original and healthy form? Why would they want to destroy everything? Right?
Yeah,
you have to look a
control.
little bit deeper. I think it's even more than that. It's even more than that. So all I know is that if you believe in a creator and that everything was created and we were created supposedly in his image, why would they want to convert that and change us? It just goes a little bit deeper. So, I prefer to, because of my experiences, go as organic as possible. I know what I feel, and I know what I observe in others that do that. And I know who's healthy and who's not, and who's dependent on a system and who's not, right? So that's all I care about. Is my children have really, besides a few coughs here and there, have never been sick. They're 20, 18, and 8. Never been sick.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to brag. I say that because I've tried to really, truly pay attention to what goes in their bodies, and then what organic supplements will keep their cells clean and their gut bacteria healthy and all of these things. Because gut bacteria being balanced, then your body is being signaled by the chemicals that are given off by your digestive system that dictate thought. So we look at the massive uptick in mental health issues. I mean, you just look at gut biome, man.
To kind of make that a simpler, did a podcast like a year and a half ago with Dr. Ken Canuck, and he's in Canada. And we were talking about how people respond to food. And he was talking about his brother, like if they would go out for ice cream, would like turn into like, just this argumentative, just like he's like, in a nutshell, he was an asshole. He's like, well, then my brother did a bodybuilding show, was eating clean. He was so pleasant to be around. After the bodybuilding show, we went out for ice cream. He's like, he ate ice cream, and just the whatever was in the ice cream, he became that asshole again. And I said, wow, what's interesting is like I could see that in my own kids. Like if we eat certain foods versus if you give them a little bit of a treat, it has this negative impact on them. And it's really, I always say, I've seen this decline in athletes that come to my gym since 2010. It's just
Right.
a decline. And people think I'm crazy for talking. I'm like, dude, it's all like, look at how you eat. Or for the parents, I explain to them, you're feeding your kids all this like fake shit. And this is why we have high school kids who can't do push-ups. And that's my buddy John Welborn was talking about, the Army had to change their fitness test to doing like deadlifts because people couldn't do a pull-up. And he said, look at anybody who's got a fat ass, they can't do pull-ups. He's like, you don't see fat Marines. And he said, because they take pride, and that pull-ups is in their test. So you want to get better at bodyweight exercises, don't be fat.
Right. Well, and most people aren't educated deliberately, I think, about what they're supposed to be eating. That's just part of it. Americans don't know the difference between organic and inorganic compounds. So if we take aluminum, inorganic aluminum, which is a heavy metal, and that builds up in your cells, it's very detrimental to your health. I mean, they say it causes a lot of things that contributes to Alzheimer's, autism, dementia, all these things. Well, the organic form of that metal, which has been chelated up out of the ground by a plant and bonded with carbon, then makes it fuel for your mitochondria, which is the furnace of your cell. So then that aluminum that's bonded with carbon will now be burned by your mitochondria to create energy within the cell. So then it becomes beneficial. Americans don't know the difference between organic and inorganic substances. And that's something that people freak out when they see the word arsenic. Well, they can look up that there are numerous tests and data showing that organic forms of arsenic have been shown to be very detrimental to cancer, destroy cancer, right? But they never say that in these studies. It says certain, like when you see the headline, certain forms of arsenic prove effective against cancer, but they never say the word organic arsenic, right? And so people aren't, and I've talked to, guys with horticulture degrees, agronomists, people that are experts that have only been educated in chemicals and how they interact and how they grow food and all these sort of things. And when I say, they'll say, the levels of stuff in this certain product, that it makes me pause for a second. I go, well, but it's organic. And they go, yeah, but still. And I go, you have a degree from so-and-so university's horticulture department, right? Yeah. Did they teach you the difference between organic and inorganic? And a lot of times they go, I just go research a little bit. I'll come back and talk to you in a month. Mm-hmm. And I come back and they go, wow. Well,
now the supermarkets kind of allow you to blur the lines of what's organic and,
Well, that's the thing. It's the same thing in agriculture. They'll take a source of humic fulvic from coal, which is not organic. They have to use harsh chemicals to remove the humic fulvic from the coal, which is leonardite, called leonardite. And then they add organic substances into it and then can call it organic.
Yes.
They can, and that's what they'll do.
A certain amount of, certain amount of things allow you to call it organic. Right. I don't want to crush your time here, Pat. I want to close out with a few fun questions.
Okay.
And we'll do some rapid fire. What's your preferred gun?
Wow. I've got a handgun or rifle.
Let's go with one of each. What's your favorite handgun?
Honestly, I've got an old Ruger 9mm. I mean, I've got 45s and stuff like that, but old Ruger 9mm I can hit anything with that.
Yeah, my buddy has a Ruger. Nice. And what about rifle? When you go hunting, you go with a rifle, or you do a compound bow, or?
I've got a 223, a DPMS that's been very dependable. They're no longer in. I think they got bought out years ago, but I've got an old 223 that's pretty dependable gun.
I met Scott Valkortson. He owns Valkortson Firearms in Iowa. His dad, I think, started the company in the early 70s. Some pretty high-end handguns and rifles.
Okay.
What about what do you drive?
What do I drive? A Dodge pickup.
At what year? What year? How long is it going for?
It's a 2014.
Yep.
It's got the Hemi in it. I'm still a Ford guy though. After having this, I got to be honest, I'm a Ford guy.
Really? So how come you don't have a Ford, or you have another one?
Well, I'll drive this one into the ground first.
Right. The Fords are impressive. Yeah.
I've always had Fords before that. And my favorite vehicle though that I've ever had is the 6.0 Excursion that's been bulletproofed.
You put bulletproof, what do you mean it's been bulletproofed?
It's got the heavier head bolts, the studs, and a lot of other things that it's been deleted so that it's not blowing heads and all that. It was an engine built by Caterpillar.
Oh, wow.
And you can literally throw vegetable oil in it and the thing will run. I mean, those engines are incredible. With that truck, I pulled one of the big power company trucks. One of the big power company trucks that was stuck in a ditch off a farm road where I used to live. It was buried in snow. I mean, buried. and traffic was backed up. It was just an intersection out in the country where a public school is as well. And I pulled up and I said, open the back door and grab that tow strap and I'll hook on and I'll pull you out. And the guy goes, dude, you're not pulling that truck out. And I go, just hook it up. Put it in the tow package 4 low and pulled that truck out like it did, like I didn't even have anything attached to me. And the power company guy goes, holy shit. I go, this diesel, man, this thing is, they're amazing. When they've been bulletproof, these things are ridiculous. So,
and now the diesel gas is, I mean, my buddy has a place in Pennsylvania since we were kids, and him and his brother in the early 90s both bought diesel trucks. Now the diesel gas is just, it's crazy how expensive gas is.
Yeah, that's part of the farming issue as well, right? And trucking. A lot of truckers are having to park their trucks because they can't afford the fuel and the insurance. So private owners are just parking their trucks, and that's part of the problem with the supply chains.
Damn. All right, last question.
Okay.
UFOs, yes or no?
I mean, I would tend to guess that the elites of this planet are freaking aliens. I mean, look at the way they treat us.
Joe Rogan said something to the effect that he's like the aliens watch us and they're like, fuck that, let's not even go down there.
No, I think quite the opposite. I think they observed and said, you know, humans are so easily programmed that we could just take over they don't even know we're here. We're just taking over.
You're right. This is going to be easy. Let's just take over.
Yeah. Hey, I got a good idea. We'll feed them chemical laced food and poison them and make them even dumber.
Weak and dumb. It's horrible. Well, you know, speaking of education, you got a younger kid. What do you guys do for school? You go to a local school, you homeschool? What do you got going on?
We have always debriefed our children when they get home from school. Let's put it that way. Right.
Well, I hope school is all right in Iowa.
You know, it's kind of a varying degrees of lunacy, to be honest with you. It's everywhere because it's being handed down by the Department of Education and a lot of the craziness, you know, and this isn't political. I don't even discuss politics anymore.
Yep.
But when you've got a program that tells children, minority children, that it's okay that they can't tell time and be to class on time or get good scores on grades for something as shallow as skin color, you are deliberately undermining children. You're deliberately undermining children, minority children, and it's very obvious what's going on. And those are policies that are about as racist as you can get. Every child, no matter what, to a certain extent, minus, you know, mental handicaps and things like that, need to be held to the same standard because then you raise everyone, right? Now, am I going to help the kid like myself who, I mean, I didn't like school. I didn't want to be in school. I didn't feel it was beneficial because it wasn't the way I wanted to learn. I needed more help, to be honest with you. Yeah. I needed more help without a doubt. So I was one of those kids. So that's the sort of help that kids need to get. And there's a lot of home atmospheres for children of all backgrounds, you know, where there might be substance abuse, alcohol abuse, you know, other things going on at home where these children are suffering. You know, we always have to take those things into account, but to deliberately treat people differently based on skin color is about as racist as policy as you can have.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still in the schools. And so sometimes I'm like, man, it is heartbreaking. There's a lot of things about it that's heartbreaking. And I know things are kind of different in each state. What about the sports your kids are involved in? Are they involved in any sports? And your older ones, what did they do with sports?
My oldest one's rowing in college. She swam for a good portion of her life.
Yep.
My middle daughter swam her whole life. And my youngest daughter has done tennis, swimming. She wrestled last winter and done track this summer.
Yeah. So. My daughter also plays tennis. You know, we kind of talk about the standards. Well, things even have changed in sports and athletics, right? I mean, right. Even in the Olympics, right? People have shared there's now a fourth place or like you get a tie. I don't know. There was a tie. I mean, it's crazy.
Participation trophies, bro.
in the Olympics. Yeah. So
Right.
pretty wild. But this was great, Pat. So for the, people are going to watch and listen, but for the people listening, I wrote down, they could follow you on Instagram, which is great. We've got chemicalfreebody.com and then
soilsavior.com, where they can get the product. For people that just want to put it on their lawns and their gardens, I'm creating what I call Jurassic gardens. I get pictures from all over the country of folks who have applied it, foliar sprayed it onto their garden plants, and they've exploded, grown massive plants, tons of tomatoes and cucumbers and other vegetables. And those nutrients, those organic nutrients, then are going to be in those vegetables, right? So that's something that they can.
Or do you have another Instagram? I follow your personal one.
I have a Soil Savior.
Okay.
Soil Savior Instagram as well.
Okay, I'll check it out. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just launched that not that long ago, but yeah, they can follow me at PJ Miletich on Instagram.
Yes. Yeah, great stuff. A lot of great stuff. You were mentioned the one real good one that I loved was like your fighters that came from other countries. When they came to the supermarket, they were like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah, they were the ones that that was 20 some years ago. A lot of
Right.
time when they started saying they'd go grocery shopping, I told them where the grocery store was. They'd come back to the one room efficiency places where they were staying for their 8-week, 6-week camps at my gym, and they basically say, now we know why Americans are fat and disease ridden, because of what is in your grocery stores. It's disgusting.
Where were those guys coming from? Europe?
They've come from Brazil, Asia, Europe, all over the place.
Did you fight in Pride, Pat? I can't remember.
No, I mean, I trained Mark Coleman for Pride, for the first Pride Grand Prix that he won.
I remember.
I had fought in UFC in Japan, and then the Rings organization in Japan as well. So I I took a lot of trips to Japan back in the day.
What did you pick up anything from the Japanese with regards to nutrition, lifestyle? Because it's interesting, their elderly look much younger. They don't age.
Well, they're eating, they're eating, fish. They're eating rice. They're eating, a lot of, seaweed, a lot of, nutrient-rich stuff. They're not obese for the most part, besides the sumos.
Right.
So, my observations of looking at people around the world in my travels and going, America's the only place where everybody's literally fat. We got serious problems. And that Dr. Ed Thomas told me in the 90s, mid 90s to late 90s, that it was a national security issue already, that obesity was already a national security crisis.
Is he still accessible? Is he still alive? Or
he's in the Des Moines area. I haven't talked to him for a few years.
I'll look him up.
Yeah, amazing source of knowledge.
Yeah, I'd love to hear his feedback on modern day physical education. But like you said, he pulled out and was. Yeah, he's done with that. That's heartbreaking too.
It is, because he's the guy with all the knowledge, to fix things.
I think people like him get pushed out, including even people like me, not as knowledgeable as him, but because we challenge people, we make things difficult because we know that's actually beneficial to do hard things. But I think many have in our country, they view hard work as punishment, like challenging physical activity is viewed as punishment when it's really a gift to challenge your body.
Right. And that's, I've trained law enforcement military for 25 years. And when I would do a law enforcement program, there would be, certain departments are going to just select somebody to be the defensive tactics instructor. The guy's never been in a fight in his life. He doesn't know a lick about fighting, but he gets sent to my seminar that would last for 3 days or 5 days, depending on the course. And they don't know their left from their right. And I would just periodically stop the entire group or give a little speech and say, look, we will never in my courses lower ourselves down to the lowest common denominator. You will raise yourself up, and I will work with you extra if I have to. If you need help, let me know. And I will recognize too that you're going to need extra help. But if you can't perform this stuff and then teach it back to me and I can observe you teaching it before you leave, you're not getting a certificate. You're not going back to your department with a certificate, period.
Nice.
End of story.
How
And so
many,
that's just,
what was like the percent of people, law enforcement that were like, this is, you're just not, you're going to have to do a lot more work and come back another time?
there were some, but most of the time I was able to, I guess, motivate people to realize that they were capable. People a lot of times don't realize that they're capable of more until they're told they are,
Correct.
right? That outside affirmation, so to speak. But there were officers who, in situations like our weapon retention, the way we viewed weapon retention out of most of the academies was taught out of theory. And well, weapon side down, if they have one hand on the weapon, we want to have two, all that was constant, across the board being taught in academies. And I went, well, if both hands are on the weapon and the weapon side is down, well, they're never going to get up because they never put their hands on the ground to get up.
Right.
And they just lay there. And the window of opportunity for the bad guy is not seconds, it is minutes. And then more fatigue sets in. Then you start getting punched in the side of the head, you get knocked out, you get your gun taken from you, right? So when we would do it, we had to put on duty belts and training weapons and literally beat the living shit out of each other trying to take each other's guns, right? And that's the only way that we learned, was under those harsh environments. And I had police officers who were all Americans in football and wrestling and a lot of other guys in the development of this stuff. And we just came up with a totally different system that, if done right and you're able to pull it off and you're motivated enough to get back to your feet, you're generally going to be up in a matter of seconds, as opposed to just laying down there holding onto your gun, getting your head caved in, right? So, but we had officers who literally not only walked out of our training, but resigned from the departments because they realized that if somebody wanted to take their weapon, they weren't going to be able to stop them. And so that it did happen.
It's, what's crazy is, I'll be driving and I'll see, a policeman doing some sort of, I guess they're doing overtime with construction. You see how unfit they are. So step one is, how do they get through police academy? Why are they how do they get through police academy? And then, Jocko speaks about it. He's like, look, 20% of their week should involve training, should be jujitsu and physical fitness. And you gotta train. I would be, I feel like it's normal. You just think, well, something could happen to me. And that inspires me enough to really elevate my training. Something shitty could happen out there and I want to be ready at all times.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you look at the stress levels, the cortisol levels, the diet, all the stuff included. And, the way cops are being treated these days, there's got to be a large percentage of officers out there of, why even try harder the way we're abused by society? You know what I mean? It's a thankless job. Yeah. And we've come a long way. And there's a lot of really good cops out there, man.
Yes.
But they always highlight the bad apples, or the people who, the responsible parties are the people who won't write the checks for the training, right? Correct. Now you've got low numbers in law enforcement, so they don't have the number of bodies they need to even cover shifts. So that makes it even harder to train, right? They're working overtime constantly. They're overstressed. There's a lot of things going into this, and it's by design in my mind. It's hard to say it's not by design that all of this stuff's going on, when it's defund the police and all this other stuff. It's very unfortunate. So
yeah, we can go down the rabbit hole certainly on that, but you're right. Cops have been viewed now as the enemy, and that's very heartbreaking because as a kid, they were the hero and you respected them and you didn't want to let them down if they saw you doing something.
Right.
And now we see things that are heartbreaking. And when kind of like all the riots and all that stuff started happening, and a lot of them began resigning, and that's what they wanted, which only, it didn't work out to anybody's benefit. That jujitsu guy in New Jersey, Tom DeBlast, he really highlights the bad side to those things and then offers free training, but I think sometimes when you offer free, people don't respect it enough. And
well, they don't value. Yeah, they don't value it when it's free.
that's it. There's no value. And so somebody had messaged me after they saw Tom. It was a Florida policeman who said in that town they had like one of those shooters come into the school, and I don't know if it was Tom or somebody. They went down and did a free training for that township police department, and they said the numbers were shockingly low. And then on the second day, some of the guys who showed up on the first day didn't even show up on the second day. And I said, that's the problem. There's no skin in the game. Nobody, if you don't pay for it or there's no repercussion for not showing up, they don't do it. And so, being a dad, this stuff is always on my mind. Like, what's going to happen if a shooter enters my kid's school, or working in a school myself? I'm a strength coach, but I'm always wondering, like, when we do lockdowns, I've said it before, I am not hiding in the corner with these kids. I'm not doing that. That's bullshit.
Yeah, well, and just, I know you got to run, but here's the thing is, I did a speech one time for a bunch of business owners. I was asked to come and speak for some business owners. And it's a pretty big group of people, and I was explaining everything that goes into the components of all the different elements of mixed martial arts, all the different types of martial arts, the different types of aerobic and anaerobic conditioning that go into it, finding that fine line between strength and endurance, and all these different explanations. And I got done and said, does anybody have any questions? And there was one guy, half of my speech had his arms crossed, just kind of with his head to the side, kind of like, I gotta sit here and listen to this ridiculous bullshit. And he raises his hand, and I say, yeah. And he goes, he literally said this to me. He goes, why would I even want to learn any of this shit?
And he was a businessman or
a business owner, owner. So what I said to him, I said, well, mankind is the only animal born on the planet with no self-defense instinct born into us. We are completely helpless unless we're taught how to defend ourselves, right? And I said, so when you walk out your front door with your wife and kids, and somebody that's motivated and capable physically of hurting you and your children, you serve zero purpose to your wife and children. You're useless in more ways than one. And whatever they want to do to you and your kids, they're going to do it. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. I said, on the contrary, when I walk outside with my family and someone tries to hurt myself and my children, they're probably going to the hospital or the morgue. And that's the difference, right? So you can be a victim, or you can be someone who walks around capable of doing massive amounts of damage if you have to protect the people that you love.
Yeah.
Simple answer.
That should be motivating.
Yeah, he understood pretty quickly. He understood pretty quickly how his attitude needed to change about the way he looked at things.
Yeah. And I don't know when you gave that speech, but look at I'm pretty sure there's been an increase in criminal activity. I saw my son was watching YouTube, and then like other videos popped up. And so we watched it yesterday. It was in Vegas. 2 young kids robbed like a smoke shop. Did you see that?
The guy stabbed the kid. I don't know if did that kid die?
I have no clue. I tried to find information on it, but he stabbed him 7, 8, 9 times. And the one stab was like in the upper back. But those kids, they looked like teenagers. And I read the comments, and it supposedly said that those 2 kids who robbed it were like 21 or 22. But it comes down to, all right, the home life of those 2 kids to go, or there was 3 kids, but 2 entered the store to rob. They all looked young. That, changes things. And talk about the kid who stabbed, the kid who hopped the counter, was impressed that he did it. And the kid actually started fighting back a little bit. So I kind of took all that into account. Like, you don't know who's going to walk into your store and demand money, or, my gym is off the back of railroad tracks. My neighbors sometimes a little bit like strange, and I'm always have this little fear in the back of my mind, like, do I have a weapon ready for somebody who enters the back, the front? Can I handle myself with my own hands?
Right.
All that stuff comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and that smoke shop, that employee's probably been, people have probably done that to him numerous times, walked in and grabbed stuff and run out.
He was young.
How many
Looked like a
times, how
kid.
frustrated he is. You don't want to just pick up a knife and start stabbing somebody who's just grabbing something off a shelf and running, right? So the legality of that, and that kid's probably going to go to jail for that, which is very unfortunate
The kid
that
who
he was put in
stabbed.
that situation. The kid that stabbed the other kid, the guy that was
Well,
working behind the counter.
I know the state laws are different. In California, I know like criminals, he would have been the criminal, the kid who defended his store. In Vegas, I don't know the law.
Yeah. I just think that, the kid did not brandish a weapon or anything like that and go straight to a knife and start stabbing somebody to death. Might be a little bit that's, I'm not an attorney. I'm not, I don't know the statutes in different states in that area, but that use of force level probably goes well above probably what they would deem necessary. It would be like you and I are the same as anybody else out there. If we get attacked and once we hurt the person and they go down to the ground and the threat level is no longer there, if we continue to injure them, then at that point, that's when we enter the criminality zone, right?
I'm assuming legal wise, they might say when that act of being robbed, you're like not in quote unquote your right mind. If that was like, I doubt that would be like his plan thing to himself, but like I could imagine like you go into this level of, I don't even know, where you're just not thinking.
Oh, adrenaline, anger, all kinds of emotions come out, everything else,
It'll be
So
interesting to see what happens to the kid. Yeah.
yeah, it will. But that's why you want to know how to take care of yourself with your hands as well. Don't go straight to a gun or a knife and start shooting or stabbing. That's the thing why police officers need to be highly trained with their hands, because then they're able to de-escalate things using their hands, getting control of people, those sort of things, so things don't escalate out of control where they have to go to the gun, right?
Yeah. And then, I know we could go down that rabbit hole, but I think also like I had heard a video with you of like dogs. I think maybe you were with Joe Rogan, but I always think of like, what happened to that place in Texas where everybody owns a gun, or where were the dogs with the police that they could, I think of so much stuff because I have kids. So I'm always thinking of like,
Yeah, you're asking why, and, not just seeing it happen. It's like when I'm doing broadcasting or coaching. When I teach a kid a technique, I say, this is why you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Not here's how you throw a right hand. So you throw a right hand, you turn the fist over so that it rolls the shoulder up higher. You can cut people when you turn your knuckles over. Your shoulder raises up to protect that side of your head. The why. This is why you do it this way.
Yeah.
If you do it another way and you don't do it the way I'm teaching you, this is what can happen, right? So then when I'm calling fights, this is not what is happening. They can see what's happening on TV. One guy's getting his ass kicked. Why it's happening, what one guy's doing wrong and one guy's doing right, and how it can be corrected by the guy that's losing. That sort of thing. Always be the why guy and always ask why things are happening. Why is my health shitty? What am I doing to cause my health? Maybe I should start reading about diet. Maybe I should start reading about supplementation and what the human body actually can use and can't use and what's detrimental. That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Why am I sick? Why am I obese?
Yeah. And taking action. It comes down to people get offended when we have to say, listen, you shouldn't be like this. Why are you like this? Well, I choose to eat these foods and I choose this, certain lifestyle of inactivity. And it's like, we're not allowed to bring those things up, but we really need to, because there's too much tap dancing around topics that need to sometimes just be addressed aggressively.
Right. Well, and Patrick Flannery, one of the guys from Boondock Saints, right? He played Powder in the movie Powder.
Oh yeah.
Sean Patrick Flannery.
Yeah.
So great actor,
yeah.
great jiu-jitsu guy. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, right? Owned Hollywood Jiu-Jitsu, all that. Lives in Texas now. But when I asked him, what is freedom to you? His answer on that, is the freedom to make choices, the freedom to eat what I want or smoke cigarettes. But then don't expect us to cover your ass when you're in the hospital dying, or you've got obesity related diseases and all these other things, because that was free. That's freedom of choice. But then you can't expect us to pay the bills for your hospital stays and your surgeries and everything else because you made shitty choices.
Yeah. Or punish, other people are taxed for other
Right.
people are footing the bill. I like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I like it. This has been awesome, Pat. To be continued.
Yeah. Good talking to you, brother.
It was great chatting. I'm going to share, obviously, your links with everybody for everybody to connect with you. And what do you got? Anything that you would like to close out with? Maybe a question I didn't ask you or a topic you wanted to address?
No, just hey man, start taking care of yourself. Start becoming aware of what heals the human body, and that is organics, not synthetics. And really pay attention. Start reading labels and eat a lot of plants and a lot of lean proteins that are, hopefully from farm to table type products.
Love it. Love it. So hang tight. I'm just going to shut down the video and
Okay.
want to chat with you a bit. So thanks to everybody for watching and listening. Make sure you're following Pat on social, visit the websites, and share this out with friends who need to hear this message. And we will talk to you guys soon.